Hi, this is Dr. Christopher Murray. I'm a naturopathic and chiropractic physician here in Hastings, Nebraska, and I'm putting together just a short video on World Mental Health Day. That's today, by the way. And so I want to talk a little bit about mental health and the three basic areas that affect mental health. Of course, mental illness is an important thing for us to discuss. In the United States, around 40 to 50,000 suicides occur every year, and almost 20 times that in attempts. So it's a very serious thing, and it's kind of a secretive thing as well. A lot of people try to keep that inside, and they feel very ashamed about that, and so it's important for us to talk about these issues. But the three basic areas that affect mental health. First of all, there's the kind of the emotional factors, and this has to do with past experiences. Perhaps they've been victims of abuse or bullied in school, maybe domestic or elderly abuse. It's kind of that historical perspective and kind of learned behaviors that people have gone through and have developed. Well, of course, there's probably some counseling things that need to be done with that. And that's why counseling is a good thing. You're never going to take a pill and get rid of an abuse issue that's happened in the past. And that's why it is important for us to kind of bring some of these things out in the open, to not just push it under the rug and deny that it's even there. We need to be willing to reach out to our friends, to our family members who are dealing with depression or anxiety, with mental illness, and to come beside them, help them. And maybe get them, like I said, into counseling. Perhaps get them into a Christian counselor or into their local clergy. Somebody who will listen, somebody will help them. And I think that, I'm also a man of faith. I believe in God, of course, and I'm a Christian. And I think that that's also something that as Christians, we need to step forward and be willing to get out of our comfort zones and help people who are in need. And there are a lot of people that have mental illness that they have needs. Sometimes they may be difficult to love at times. Well, too bad. We have to be willing to step out and help people, step out of our own comfort positions to help people in need. Yeah, sure, we need to pray for them. Of course we need to. But we need to be willing to get out and help people, get them to the help that they need for sure. So that's the emotional factors affect how we cognate, how we reason, how we deal with anxiety and stress, emotional factors. Secondly, there are true chemical imbalances. I know some people that say that, mental illness is just a joke. They say, well, it doesn't even exist. Well, that's just ridiculous. There certainly are chemical imbalances. Just like there are people who are diabetics and don't produce insulin, there are people that don't produce as much serotonin, dopamine, some of the feel-good hormones in the brain. We know that there are chemical imbalances and metabolic factors that affect how we think, how we cognate, how we reason. And so there are people that have hormones can certainly affect that too. Hormones affect your brain. The thyroid affects your brain. That's why we do a lot of thyroid testing and hormone testing in our office. And you bet, that can certainly affect anxiety and depression. Of course it can. I have an example of a kid who came in, and the school was trying to have him medicated with ADD medication. And so we did a test, and sure enough, he's hypothyroid. He didn't need Ritalin. He needed thyroid support. That's what he needed. But that based off a test. So certainly hormones can affect that. Neurotransmitters. You can actually test serotonin, dopamine, these kinds of hormones, brain hormones. You can test these indirectly through the urine. So we test that in our office quite often. Deficiencies. Oh boy, there's tons of deficiencies that are correlated with depression, anxiety. It only makes sense that if you do not have the proper nutrition, the proper nutrients for your brain, it's not going to think right. It won't metabolize correctly. You won't be able to create the neurotransmitters that you need to create. Vitamin D, for instance, that's just one example. The sunshine vitamin, that's been associated, and there's multiple studies out there showing that it's certainly as effective as certain medications for depression and anxiety. So if you have a vitamin D deficiency, it needs to be addressed. And if you don't know if you have a vitamin D deficiency, it should be tested. And that's just one example. You got the omega-3 fatty acids, there's all kinds of nutrients that can affect depression and anxiety, and how your brain cognates and reasons, not just depression and anxiety, but also just brain fog and fatigue, just your general sense of happiness, because those balance of hormones in the brain affect how you feel. Also, there's people who have genetic mutations, and that still has to do with metabolic factors. So we can test those things. You can test whether you have genetic factors that affect your ability to metabolize and make certain neurotransmitters. And some of these things can certainly, you can help and support your genes. You can't change your genes. But certain things like MTHFR, which is a genetic mutation, you can support that through proper methylation. There's toxicities, there's also infections, stealth infections, and PANDAS, if you've ever heard of PANDAS. People that go through an acute, not cute, but an acute change in mental health status, perhaps an infection is the thing that actually caused that. Perhaps that's an infection. And more studies are coming out showing that an infection can actually change the brain, inflammation in the brain, and then cause different disorders. There's just so many things in this area of metabolism that only makes sense that we should be looking at that. Yes, there's medications you can take that affect those neurotransmitters, but nobody's deficient in Prozac. I'm not saying that people shouldn't take antidepressant medications. I'm not saying that at all, but we should be addressing the foundational aspects of why your brain works the way it does, address deficiencies, address those kinds of things, at least address those things first. True aggressive prevention from conditions becoming problematic. And that involves looking at deficiency areas and toxicity concerns and perhaps some of those infectious things which we test routinely. We can't not talk about exercise, and exercise is important. There's some mental health providers that will require that individuals that they go through some kind of exercise program if they're going to go through a psychiatric or psychological counseling in their offices. So exercise, we know, increases some of the endorphins and enkephalins, some of the good feel-good hormones in the brain. So it's important to address exercise as well. And this is what I'd say in this area. I talked before about the emotional factors, and we need to step out and help people and try to support them in those areas. Well, we also need to, in this area, push and promote general good health, good diet, lack of sugar, cutting down dramatically on the amount of refined sugars, because we know that also affects serotonin levels as well. There's so much could be said about proper nutrition and also food sensitivities. Go on to autismspeaks.com, and they have studies on there. I'm not advocating for that organization per se, but they have studies on there showing that food sensitivities affect autism. And that doesn't mean that you're actually going to take away somebody's autism by addressing their food. That's not what I'm saying. But if you take away something that's stressful on a person, you take away perhaps if they are eating something that they shouldn't, then it reduces the amount of stress on a person's body, and they can better cognate, they can better reason, they can better deal with life. So the metabolic aspect of who we are is very complicated, but we need to deal with the foundational stuff first. And that's proper nutrition, but then past that, and exercise. Past that, though, we can look at genetic factors, and we can look at some of those food sensitivity areas, and we can look at deficiency areas and infections and those kinds of things, and can certainly have a dramatic impact on people's lives and health, and in the mental health area as well. So that's kind of the chemical or metabolic factors. And then you get into brainwave patterns, the third component of what I say are the three basic areas that affect mental health. You have emotional factors, chemical imbalances, and then brainwave patterns. Brainwave patterns is kind of the crosstalk that goes on throughout the brain, and it's this balancing of the amount of beta and alpha and theta and delta brainwaves. Those things go on all the time. You don't even know it's going on, and there's patterns that develop up there. Certain patterns, for instance, an excess amount of beta brainwaves are associated with anxiety. A high amount of alpha waves are associated with depression. Well, the good thing is that you can test this, and we're doing a in our office here a half-price brain map, an EEG brain map in our office where we actually test those things. And so you can actually test beta and alpha and theta and delta. And the good thing about an EEG brain map is it does give some information, some metabolic information. So you can't do a brain map and say that somebody, definitively has a thyroid, is hypothyroid, but you can see evidence of metabolic factors on a brain map, an EEG brain map, such as we do. But you can most certainly see the imbalance of beta and alpha and theta and delta. And with that brain map, you can do brain training, neurofeedback, which is a type of biofeedback. This is not new. This technology has been out for quite some time. The VA hospitals, they're actually doing neurofeedback for PTSD for veterans and also for dealing with the opioid crisis. I've had several veterans come into our office and inquiring about that because they've heard about the great results from it. So it's a great, because you can actually take some of those brainwave patterns. If you have an excess amount of beta or an excess amount of alpha, some of those associated with anxiety or depression, you can train up and train down some of those with neurofeedback that we do in our office here. So the three basic areas that affect mental health: the emotional factors, chemical imbalances or metabolic factors, and also the brainwave patterns, all are an integral and important in how the brain functions and affecting mental health, how you cognate, how you reason, how you think. I wanted to give the suicide prevention number, 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-8255. The crisis is, of course, important for us to deal with. And everybody probably knows of somebody who has had a suicide in their family. It's serious. We know, like I said, it's 40,000 to 50,000 in the United States, and it's important for us to reach out and help those people in need. But it's important to know, too, that there is help. There's help in getting to the root causes of problems. And the root cause of the problems really are somewhere contained in those three I just talked about. It's not just one thing. And so it's my hope and my prayer that those who are listening today will think honestly about aggressively preventing these conditions, to helping a friend, a family member, stepping out of their comfort zone and helping those, praying for those. And if we can help anybody out with any of these areas, you can certainly give our office a call at area code 402-463-4257, 402-463-4257, and go ahead and mention this, and we will also give you a half-price brain map as well. Thank you so much, and have a blessed rest of your day.